I took the job because my brother owed money to people who don't forgive debt. The listing said overnight inventory specialist for the Route 19 tunnel maintenance depot. $800 a week, cash every Friday, no questions about gaps in your resume. I drove up on a Tuesday in October when the aspens were already bare. The depot sat 200 yards from the tunnel's north entrance, a cinderblock box with a metal roof and 3 security lights that hummed like dying insects. A woman named Carver met me in the gravel lot. She was maybe 60 with hands that looked like they'd rebuilt engines. "You're the new stock clerk," she said. Not a question. "That's right." She handed me a ring with 12 keys, each labeled with black tape and a number. Keys 1 through 6 are for the depot. 7 is the main gate. 8 through 12 you won't need unless something goes wrong. What goes wrong? If you follow the rules, nothing. She walked me to the depot door, used key number 1 and pushed it open. The smell hit me first. Concrete dust, motor oil, and something else I couldn't name. Something old. The main room held industrial shelving units loaded with supplies. Hydraulic fluid, road salt in 50-pound bags, replacement bulbs for the tunnel lights, spare batteries, coils of cable, tarps, flares, first aid kits. A desk sat in the corner with a logbook, a radio, and a clipboard holding inventory sheets. "You work 10 at night until 6 in the morning," Carver said. "Every hour you do a full inventory count. Write it in the log with the time. Every 2 hours you do a radio check on channel 6. Every 3 hours you inspect the depot perimeter and the tunnel entrance. You walk exactly 100 yards into the tunnel, no further, and you verify the emergency phone at marker 47 is working. You note everything in the log." I wrote this down on the back of my hand. "The rules are posted by the desk," she continued. "You read them now. You read them every night before you start. You follow them exactly." She pointed to a laminated sheet taped to the wall above the desk. I stepped closer and read, "Depot Night Shift Operational Rules 1. Arrive no earlier than 9:45 at night and no later than 10 o'clock. Lock the main gate behind you with key 7. 2 inventory counts begin at 11 o'clock sharp. Each count must be completed within 20 minutes. Log the time you finish. 3 radio checks occur at midnight, 2 in the morning and 4 in the morning. Use channel 6 only. Say your name, the date, and depot clear. Wait for the response tone. If you hear a voice instead of a tone, end the transmission and do not respond. 4. Perimeter walks occur at 1 in the morning and 4 in the morning. Walk clockwise starting from the front door. Count your steps. The full circuit is exactly 214 steps. If you count more or fewer, return to the front door and start again. 5. Tunnel. Inspections occur at 1:30 in the morning and 4:30 in the morning. Enter through the north entrance. Walk to marker 47. Test the emergency phone. If it rings while you are there, do not answer it. Return immediately. 6. Between 2:10 and 2:20 in the morning, cover the west window with the black tarp stored under the desk. After 2:20, remove the tarp and fold it exactly as you found it. 7. If you hear knocking on any door or window, do not acknowledge it. Continue your work. Do not look toward the source of the sound. 8. If the main lights fail, use the backup generator key, number 8. Do not use flashlights. Do not light flares inside the depot. 9. If you see a person in a yellow safety vest near the tunnel entrance during your inspection, verify their badge number against the authorized list in the desk drawer. If they have no badge or if the number is not on the list, return to the depot without speaking to them. 10. The south storage closet remains locked at all times. Do not open it for any reason. If you hear sounds from inside it, note the time in the log and continue your duties. 11. During inventory counts, if any item quantity increases from the previous count, circle the number in red pen and report it in the morning. Do not use or move the extra items. 12. At 5:30 in the morning, complete a final inventory count. At 5:45, do a final perimeter walk. At 6 o'clock sharp, exit through the front door, lock it with key 1, and leave the property immediately. Do not wait for your replacement. I read the list 3 times. Carver watched me. Questions? She asked. What's in the south storage closet? Nothing you need. Who answers the radio checks? Dispatch. You'll hear the tone, that's all you need. What if... The rules cover everything, she said. The pay is good because you follow them exactly. No improvising, no curiosity. You count, you walk, you check, you log, you leave. 8 weeks and your brother's problem goes away. She knew about Marcus, of course she did. I nodded. First shift is tonight, Carver said. I'll be here at 9:45 to walk you through it once. After that, you're alone. She left me standing in the depot with the keys heavy in my pocket and the rules burning behind my eyes. That first night, Carver watched me like a hawk watches a field mouse. I arrived at 9:50. The mountain air was already cold enough to see your breath. I locked the gate with key 7, walked to the depot, and unlocked the door with key 1. The fluorescent lights clicked on, washing everything in pale green. Carver was already at the desk. She had the logbook open. You read the rules again, she said. I did, every word. She watched my lips move. Inventory at 11, she reminded me. I'll stay for the first 2 counts, then I'm gone. I spent the next hour organizing the inventory sheets and familiarizing myself with the shelving layout. Hydraulic fluid on shelf A, 8 cases of 12 bottles each. Road salt on shelf B, 42 bags. Light bulbs on shelf C, 18 boxes of 6 bulbs each. The list went on, 27 categories of supplies. At exactly 11 o'clock, I began counting. Carver followed me with her own clipboard, checking my numbers. I counted aloud. 8 cases hydraulic fluid, 42 bags salt, 18 boxes bulbs, 14 coils cable, 6 tarps, 32 flares, 11 first aid kits. It took me 17 minutes. I logged the time, 11:17. Good, Carver said. Next count at midnight. At midnight, I did the radio check first. I lifted the handset, switched to channel 6, and pressed the transmit button. This is Nathan Webb, October 17th, depot clear. I released the button. Static hissed for 3 seconds, then a clean tone sounded. 2 short beeps. That's correct, Carver said. I started the inventory count at 12:03. The numbers matched the previous count. I finished at 12:19, logged it. You're slower than you'll need to be, Carver said. But you'll speed up. I'm leaving now. 1 o'clock perimeter walk, then 1:30 tunnel inspection. You remember the steps. 214 steps for the perimeter, 100 yards into the tunnel. Marker 47 for the phone. She stood, zipped her jacket, and walked to the door. She paused with her hand on the handle. The rules exist because people didn't follow them, she said. You seem smart enough not to test why. Then she was gone. The depot felt immediately larger. The hum of the lights seemed louder. I sat at the desk and reviewed the inventory sheets, but my eyes kept drifting to the south storage closet. Just a gray metal door with a simple handle. No window, no light underneath. At 12:58, I put on my jacket and prepared for the perimeter walk. At exactly 1 o'clock, I stepped outside. The security lights cast the gravel lot in harsh white. Beyond their reach, the forest was a black wall. I started walking clockwise from the front door, counting each step silently. 1, 2, 3, 4. The gravel crunched under my boots. Cold air bit at my face. Somewhere in the trees, something moved. Probably a deer. 20, 21, 22. The west side of the building had no windows, just blank cinder block. My shadow stretched long and thin. 53, 54, 55. The back of the depot faced the mountain slope, A chain-link fence separated the property from the tree line. Nothing moved that I could see. 108, 109, 110. The east side brought me past the generator housing and the electrical panel, both secured with padlocks. 160, 161. I rounded the final corner. The tunnel entrance loomed 200 yards ahead, a massive dark mouth cut into the mountain. The safety lights inside it made the first 50 feet visible, but beyond that was nothing. 212, 213, 214. I stopped at the front door. Exactly 214 steps. I went back inside and logged it. 1:16 in the morning. At 1:30, I grabbed the heavy flashlight from the desk. Even though the rules said no flashlights inside the depot, they said nothing about the tunnel, and walked toward the north entrance. The tunnel was 12 feet wide, 17 feet high, and 2.3 miles long. It connected the North Valley to the South Valley, cutting through granite that was 60 million years old. The walls were smooth concrete, painted white, marked every 10 yards with yellow numbers. Overhead lights ran the length of the tunnel, though only every third one was lit this time of night. I walked into the entrance. The temperature dropped 10 degrees immediately. My footsteps echoed. 10 yards, marker 1, 20 yards, marker 2. The air smelled like stone and old water. My breath plumed. 30 yards, marker 3. Something dripped somewhere ahead. Condensation, probably. 40 yards. Marker 4. The emergency phone was mounted in a yellow metal box with a red handle. I reached marker 47 at 1:38. 47 was spray-painted in black on the wall next to it. I opened the yellow box. The phone was old, the kind with a rotary dial that connected directly to a hard line. I lifted the receiver, listened for the dial tone, and heard it clearly. I hung up. The phone rang. The sound split the silence like a hammer through glass. 1 ring, 2 rings. I stared at it. 3 rings. The rule was clear. If it rings while you are there, do not answer it. Return immediately. 4 rings. I turned and walked back toward the entrance. I didn't run. I kept my pace even, my breathing steady. The phone kept ringing behind me. 10 rings, 15, 20. I reached the entrance at 1:43. The ringing stopped. I logged it. Tunnel inspection complete. Phone operational. Returned 1:43. The depot felt warmer than it had before. At 2 o'clock, I did another inventory count. Everything matched. I logged it at 2:18. At 2:10, I pulled the black tarp from under the desk. It was heavy canvas, maybe 8 feet by 6 feet, folded into a precise square. I carried it to the west window, a narrow rectangle of glass high on the wall, and clipped it over the frame with the bungee cords attached to the tarp's corners. The window was completely covered. At 2:20, I removed the tarp and folded it exactly as I'd found it. I slid it back under the desk. At 2:23, I heard the first knock. 3 sharp raps on the front door. Deliberate, evenly spaced. I was at the desk updating the log. My pen stopped moving. I didn't look up. Another 3 knocks. Harder this time. The rule was clear. Do not acknowledge it. Continue your work. I kept writing. Inventory count 2, completed 2:18. Tarp procedure completed 2:21. The knocking stopped. I finished writing and set the pen down. My hand was steady. I was surprised by that. At 3 o'clock, I did another inventory count. 17 minutes, everything matched except the road salt. Previous count, 42 bags. Current count, 43 bags. I stared at the number. I counted again, physically touching each bag. 43. I circled the number in red pen as instructed. I noted it in the log. At 4 o'clock, I did the radio check. This is Nathan Webb, October 18th, depot clear. The tone sounded. 2 beeps. At 4 o'clock, I did another perimeter walk. 214 steps exactly. At 4:30, I did another tunnel inspection. I walked to marker 47. The phone was silent. I tested the dial tone. It worked. I returned at 4:41. The rest of the shift was quiet. At 5:30, I completed the final inventory count. 43 bags of salt. I circled it in red again. At 5:45, I did the final perimeter walk. 214 steps. At 6 o'clock, I locked the depot with key 1, walked to my truck, and left the property. The sky was starting to lighten. I drove home with my hands tight on the wheel and slept 6 hours without dreaming. Carver called me that afternoon. "You followed the rules," she said. "The salt increase is noted. Don't worry about it. See you tonight." She hung up before I could ask what it meant. I showed up at 9:52 that night. The routine was already settling into my bones. Lock gate, unlock depot, read rules, wait for 11. The second shift felt easier. I knew the counts now, knew where everything was. My inventory times dropped to 14 minutes. The radio checks went smoothly. The perimeter walks were exact. But during the 1:30 tunnel inspection, something was different. I walked to marker 47 at my usual pace. The emergency phone was in its yellow box, silent. I tested the dial tone. It worked. As I turned to leave, I saw footprints in the dust on the tunnel floor. They started at marker 50, 30 feet deeper than I was allowed to go, and came toward me. They stopped at marker 48, just 15 feet away. Boot prints. Work boots maybe size 11 or 12. They pointed toward me. I looked deeper into the tunnel. The lights faded into darkness around marker 60. Nothing moved. The rule said walk to marker 47. It said nothing about footprints. It said return immediately if the phone rang, which it hadn't. I walked back to the depot and logged it. Tunnel inspection complete, 1:46. I didn't mention the footprints. I don't know why. At 2:10, I covered the west window with the tarp. At 2:14, someone knocked on it. Not the door this time, the window itself. The tarp muffled the sound, but I heard it clearly. 3 knocks. 4. 5. I kept my eyes on the inventory sheet. Do not acknowledge it. The knocking continued for 2 minutes. Then it stopped. At 2:20, I removed the tarp. I didn't look at the window while I did it. At 3 o'clock, the inventory count showed 44 bags of salt. I circled it in red. At 4:30, during the tunnel inspection, the footprints were gone. The shift ended at 6. I drove home. I slept. By the end of the first week, I'd fallen into a rhythm. The counts took 12 minutes. The walks were automatic. My logs were precise. The anomalies continued. The salt bags increased by 1 nearly every shift. Carver never mentioned it. I kept circling the numbers in red. The knocking happened most nights, always during or just after the window was covered. Sometimes on the door, sometimes on the west window, once on the south wall near the storage closet. I never acknowledged it. On the 6th night, I saw someone during the 4:30 tunnel inspection. A figure in a yellow safety vest stood at marker 75, 250 feet into the tunnel. Too far to see details, but I could make out the vest's reflective strips. The rule was clear: verify their badge number against the authorized list, but they were at marker 75, not near the entrance. I walked to marker 47, tested the phone, and returned. I didn't approach the figure. When I logged it, I wrote, "Observed maintenance worker, marker 75, 100 yards, did not approach." On the 8th night, during the 2 o'clock inventory count, I heard sounds from the south storage closet. A low scraping, metal on concrete. I was counting flares, 32 as always, when it started. I stopped, pen hovering over the sheet. The scraping continued for maybe 20 seconds. Then it stopped. I noted the time in the log. 2:13, sounds from south storage closet. I finished the inventory count, 32 flares, 46 bags of salt. At 2:22, 3 minutes after I removed the tarp from the west window, someone knocked on the front door. Then they knocked on the east wall, then the north wall, then the west wall. The knocking moved around the building in a slow circle, always 3 sharp raps, always evenly spaced. It took maybe 40 seconds to complete the circuit. Then it stopped. I kept writing in the log. My handwriting was still steady. On the 15th night, Carver came to the depot at 5 in the morning. I was surprised to see her. She'd told me I'd be alone after the first shift. "You're doing well," she said, looking at the logbook. "Good counts, good times, no incidents." "Thank you." She flipped back through the pages. "The salt keeps increasing." "Yes. You haven't asked why. The rules don't say to ask why." She smiled a little at that. "No, they don't." She closed the logbook. "There's an amendment list I need to give you. Things have changed. New procedures." She handed me a laminated sheet, smaller than the main rules list. Amended Operational Rules 1. Beginning your 16th shift, inventory counts now occur every 45 minutes instead of every hour. This includes the 11 o'clock, midnight, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, and 5 o'clock counts, plus additional counts at 11:45, 12:45, 1:45, 2:45, 3:45, and 4:45. Each count must still be completed within 20 minutes. 2. During perimeter walks, if you count 215 steps or more, do not return to the front door. Continue walking clockwise until you reach exactly 214. Do not stop. Do not walk backward. 3. If you see the figure in the yellow safety vest at any marker below 60, do not verify their badge. Return to the depot immediately and lock the door with key 1. Do not complete the rest of that tunnel inspection. 4. Between 3 o'clock and 3:30 in the morning, do not speak. Do not respond to your name. Do not make any sound. Continue your work silently. 5. If the radio check receives a voice instead of a tone, write down exactly what the voice says. Do not respond. Switch to channel 9 and transmit code gray followed by your name. Wait for the tone on channel 9. If you receive a voice on channel 9 as well, power down the radio and do not use it for the remainder of the shift. 6. During the 210 to 220 window tarp procedure, count to 60 after securing the tarp. Count silently. Do not count faster or slower than 1 number per second. After 60, you may continue other tasks. If you hear knocking during this 60 seconds, start your count over. 7. The south storage closet may now be opened only under the following condition. If the main lights fail and the backup generator, key 8, does not start within 5 minutes, unlock the south storage closet with key 9. Inside, you will find a battery-powered lantern and 6 chemical light sticks. Use only these. Lock the closet immediately after retrieving the lights. 8. If you observe the figure in the yellow safety vest moving closer to the entrance across multiple shifts, note the marker number in the log each time. If the figure reaches marker 40, do not enter the tunnel for the remainder of that shift. Complete a perimeter walk instead and note, tunnel inspection replaced by perimeter walk in the log. 9. If any inventory item decreases rather than increases, circle it in blue pen and complete an immediate recount. If the decrease persists, lock the depot from the inside using the deadbolt and remain inside until 6:30 in the morning. Exit only when you see daylight through the east window. 10. At 3:45 in the morning, stand at the front door and look toward the tunnel entrance for exactly 30 seconds. Count the seconds silently. Do not look away. After 30 seconds, return to your work. If you see movement during these 30 seconds, do not investigate. Note, movement observed in the log. I read the list twice while Carver waited. "Why are these necessary?" I asked. "Because things adapt," she said. "The rules keep you safe. The amendments keep you safer." "What things?" She looked at me with those engine rebuilder hands folded on the desk. "You'll work 8 weeks, you'll get paid, your brother will be clear, that's all you need to know." People have died here. It wasn't a question. People have broken rules here, she said. That's different. You follow them, you're fine. Plenty of people have done this job and walked away clean. How many haven't? She stood. Finish your shift. The amendments start tonight. She left at 5:47. I completed the final inventory count and the final perimeter walk. At 6 o'clock, I left. That afternoon, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the figure in the yellow vest. I kept thinking about the footprints that appeared and disappeared. I kept thinking about the knocking that circled the building. Marcus called at 2 in the afternoon. You still got that job? He asked. Yeah. Good, don't quit. I need those 8 weeks. I know. You sound weird. I'm tired. It's just a warehouse job, right? Stocking supplies? Something like that. Well, thanks, I mean it. I hung up and tried to sleep. I managed 3 hours. The 16th night was when everything escalated. The new inventory schedule meant I had almost no downtime. Count, log, walk, inspect, count, log, radio, count, log. The minutes folded into each other. At 11:45 during the second count, I found 48 bags of salt, an increase of 2 since the 11 o'clock count. I circled it in red. At 1 o'clock, the perimeter walk counted 216 steps. I kept walking clockwise, not stopping. 217, 218. I rounded the building a second time. 223, 224. On the third circuit, I reached 214 at the front door. I logged it. Perimeter walk 1, completed 3 circuits to reach 214 steps. My hands were shaking when I wrote it. At 1:30, I did the tunnel inspection. The figure in the yellow vest stood at marker 68, 7 markers closer than the previous night. I walked to marker 47, tested the phone, dial tone, no ringing, and returned. I logged it. Tunnel inspection complete. Figure observed at marker 68. At 2:10, I secured the tarp over the west window. I counted to 60 silently, 1 second per count. At 42, knocking started on the window. I started my count over. 1, 2, 3. The knocking continued. 3 sharp raps, then silence, then 3 more. I kept counting. 20, 21, 22. At 57, the knocking stopped. 58, 59, 60. I stepped away from the window and continued the inventory count. At 2:20, I removed the tarp. At 3 o'clock, I began the count in silence as instructed. No speaking. I counted items by pointing and writing. It took longer, 19 minutes, but I managed it. At 3:45, I stood at the front door and looked toward the tunnel entrance. I counted to 30. At 12 seconds, something moved near the tunnel mouth. A shadow crossing from left to right. Too quick to identify. At 28 seconds, it crossed back right to left. At 30 seconds, I returned to the desk and logged it. Movement observed, 3:45 procedure. At 4:30, I did the tunnel inspection. The figure in the yellow vest stood at marker 60. Exactly marker 60. I walked to marker 47, tested the phone, and returned. The figure didn't move. I logged it. Figure at marker 60. The rest of the shift was almost quiet. Almost. At 5 o'clock during the inventory count, I found flares. Previous count at 4:45, 32 flares. Current count, 29 flares, a decrease. I circled it in blue pen as instructed. I recounted, 29. The rule was clear. Lock the depot from inside with the deadbolt. Remain until 6:30. Exit only when you see daylight through the east window. I walked to the front door and slid the deadbolt. It was heavy steel built for security. I returned to the desk and sat. The depot was completely silent. At 5:37, I heard footsteps on the roof. Slow, deliberate, walking from the west side to the east side directly above my head, 8 steps. Then they stopped. I didn't move. At 5:51, the footsteps returned, walking east to west, 8 steps, At 6:08, the first daylight touched the east window. Pale gray light. At 6:30, I unbolted the door and left. I drove home faster than I should have. Carver called me at noon. "You handled last night well," she said. "The flares decreased." "I know, you followed the procedure, that's why you're fine." "What took the flares?" Silence on the line. Then, "Something that needs them more than you did. That's all you need to understand. The figure in the vest is at marker 60. I know. If it reaches marker 40, remember the protocol. Don't enter the tunnel." "Correct. You're doing good work, Nathan. 29 more shifts." She hung up. I couldn't sleep that day either. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, counting to 60 over and over in my head. The pattern continued. On the 18th night, the figure was at marker 55. On the 19th, marker 51. On the 20th, marker 46. The salt bags kept increasing. 51 bags, 53 bags, 56 bags. The perimeter walks took multiple circuits most nights. Once I walked 5 complete circles before reaching 214 steps at the door. The knocking became more frequent. Sometimes it circled the building 3 times in one night. Sometimes it knocked in rhythm like a heartbeat. On the 22nd night at 4:07 in the morning, the radio check went wrong. "This is Nathan Webb, October 30th, depot clear." Static. Then a voice, my voice. "This is Nathan Webb, October 30th, depot clear." I released the transmit button immediately. I grabbed the pen with a shaking hand and wrote down exactly what I'd heard. "This is Nathan Webb, October 30th, depot clear." I switched to channel 9 and transmitted code gray Nathan Webb. Static. Then the 2-tone beep. I set the radio down and logged it. 0407, code gray transmitted, response tone received. I didn't use the radio again that shift. On the 24th night, the figure in the yellow vest reached marker 42. On the 25th night, marker 40. I stood at the tunnel entrance during the 1:30 inspection time and stared into the darkness. The figure stood at marker 40, exactly 120 feet away. Close enough now that I could see it wasn't moving at all. Just standing, facing me. I returned to the depot and logged it. Figure at marker 40, tunnel inspection replaced by perimeter walk. I did a perimeter walk instead. 219 steps before I reached the door. On the 27th night, the main lights failed. It happened at 2:37 in the morning. I was completing an inventory count when everything went dark. The rule was clear. Use backup generator key 8. Do not use flashlights. Do not light flares inside the depot. I felt my way to the desk and found the key ring by touch. Key 8. I moved carefully toward the back door, key 5, and unlocked it. The generator housing was 10 feet from the back door. I found it in the dim spill of the security lights. I unlocked the generator access with key 8 and hit the start button. Nothing. I tried again. Nothing. I checked my watch. 2:41. 5 minutes since the lights failed. At 2:42, I went back inside and felt my way to the south storage closet. Key 9. The lock turned smoothly. I opened the door. A battery-powered lantern sat on a shelf at chest height. Below it, 6 chemical light sticks in a cardboard box. I took the lantern and closed the door. Locked it. I switched on the lantern. Yellow light filled the depot. In that light, I saw something I hadn't noticed before. The south storage closet door had scratches on the inside. Long vertical marks like something had dragged claws down the metal. The scratches were deep enough to catch the light. I set the lantern on the desk and continued my work. The light stayed off for the rest of the shift. At 6 o'clock, I left the lantern on the desk and exited. When I came back the next night, the main lights worked fine. The lantern was gone from the desk. On the 30th night, I found something in the log that I hadn't written. I opened the book at 11 o'clock to log the first inventory count and saw an entry dated for the previous night at 3:22 in the morning. The handwriting wasn't mine. It was cramped, the letters smaller and slanted left instead of right. It said, "South storage open, 3 items removed, circuit walk incomplete." I hadn't opened the south storage the previous night. The lights had worked fine. I'd completed every circuit walk. Someone else had written in the log. Or something had. I drew a single line through the false entry and wrote next to it, "Invalid entry, not logged by current shift operator." I continued my shift. At 3:45, during the 30-second observation of the tunnel entrance, I saw 2 shadows move. One crossed left to right. One crossed right to left. They moved at the same time in opposite directions. I counted to 30 and returned to my work. On the 33rd night, during the 2 o'clock count, I found a new item on the shelves. Shelf E, which usually held cable coils and spare parts, now had a cardboard box I'd never seen before. No label, no markings. Inventory rules didn't cover new items, only increases and decreases of existing items. I counted everything else. When I finished, I approached the box. It was sealed with clear packing tape. I could hear something inside when I shifted it slightly, something that rattled. The rules said if any item quantity increases, circle it in red pen and report it in the morning. This wasn't an increase. This was an addition. I left the box where it was. I logged it. New item observed, shelf E, cardboard box, no markings, origin unknown. At 5:30, during the final count, the box was gone. I logged that too. Cardboard box no longer present. On the 36th night, the figure in the yellow vest was gone from the tunnel. I did the 1:30 inspection and walked to marker 47. The tunnel was empty. No figure at any marker I could see. I tested the phone, dial tone, no ringing, and returned. I should have felt relief. I felt dread instead. At 2:43, someone tried the front door handle. I was at the desk working on an inventory count. The handle rattled. Once, twice, 3 times, then knocking. Not the usual 3 raps. This was continuous. Bang, 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 bang. No rhythm, no pattern, just constant hammering on the metal door. It lasted for 90 seconds. Then silence. At 3:45, I did the observation. Nothing moved at the tunnel entrance. At 4:30, I entered the tunnel for the inspection. I walked to marker 47, tested the phone. As I turned to leave, I saw the figure in the yellow vest. It stood at marker 20, 60 feet from the entrance. I could see details now. The vest was dirty, the reflective strips cracked. The person wearing it had their back to me. They stood perfectly still. The rule said if the figure is below marker 60, return to the depot immediately. I walked back to the entrance. I didn't run, I kept my pace even. Behind me I heard footsteps. Boot steps on concrete, slow, steady, following me. I reached the entrance at 4:38. The footsteps stopped. I logged it. Figure at marker 20, protocol followed, footsteps observed during return. At 5 o'clock, during the count, the salt bags numbered 73. I circled it in red. The pattern was accelerating. I could feel it. The figure moved deeper into the tunnel, every other shift now. Marker 18, marker 14, marker 9. The knocking happened every night, sometimes circling the building 6 or 7 times. The perimeter walks took longer and longer. 10 circuits, 12 circuits, once 15 complete loops before I reached 214 at A. Continue the door. The salt kept increasing. 80 bags, 90 bags, 104 bags. On the 41st night at 3 in the morning, I heard something inside the south storage closet. Not scraping this time, breathing. Low and slow, like something large was resting just beyond the door. I noted the time in the log and continued counting inventory. The breathing lasted 7 minutes. Then it stopped. On the 43rd night, the figure in the yellow vest stood at marker 5, 50 feet from the tunnel entrance, 15 feet from where I was allowed to stand. I could see its face now, or where its face should have been. The vest's hood was up, but there was nothing inside it, just darkness. The vest stood upright as if worn by a person, but the hood framed empty space. I returned to the depot immediately. I logged it. I did not enter the tunnel again that night. On the 45th night, Carver appeared at 5 in the morning with another sheet of paper. "Emergency protocols," she said. "You'll need these for the last week. Emergency operational protocols. 1. If the figure in the yellow vest reaches the tunnel entrance, marker 0, do not leave the depot for any reason until 6:30. Bolt the door. Complete inventory counts and radio checks only. Skip all perimeter walks and tunnel inspections. At 6:30, exit quickly and drive away immediately. 2. If you hear your name called from outside the depot, verify that all doors and windows are secured. Do not respond. Do not look toward the source. Continue your work. If your name is called 3 times in a row, complete an immediate inventory count and note any discrepancies. 3. If the perimeter walk exceeds 20 circuits without reaching 214 steps at the door, stop walking. Stand still for 60 seconds. Count silently. After 60 seconds, walk directly to the front door regardless of your position. Do not count steps. Enter and bolt the door. 4. If all lights fail, main and backup, and the south storage lantern is depleted or missing, sit at the desk and do not move until you see daylight. Do not attempt to complete any procedures in full darkness. At 6:30, exit immediately. 5. If you find a person inside the depot who is not Carver and who is not expected, do not speak to them. Verify their badge against the authorized list. If they have no badge or if their badge number is not listed, walk past them to the front door and leave immediately, regardless of the time. Drive away and call the emergency number on the back of this sheet. I read the protocols 3 times. "The figure will reach the entrance," I said. "Probably," Carver agreed. "What is it?" "Something that used to follow the rules," she said. "Now it doesn't. That's all I know. That's all anyone knows." "Why does the salt keep increasing?" "Payment or tax or something else, it doesn't matter. You count it, you note it, you leave." 3 more weeks, I said. 3 more weeks, you've done well. Better than most. You follow the rules exactly, that's rare. What happens to people who don't? She looked at the south storage closet. "They get stored," she said quietly. She left at 5:49. I finished the shift. On the 46th night, the figure stood at marker 2. I saw it from the depot, visible through the open tunnel mouth in the safety lights. The empty hood pointed toward me. I did not enter the tunnel. I logged it and completed perimeter walks instead. On the 48th night, the figure stood at marker 1, 10 feet inside the entrance. On the 50th night, it stood at the threshold. Marker 0, half in the tunnel, half in the open air. I bolted the door at 1:27 and didn't unbolt it until 6:30. That night, the knocking never stopped. It circled the building continuously from 1:30 until 6 in the morning. Around and around and around, 3 raps at each wall, moving clockwise in an endless loop. I sat at the desk and counted inventory every 45 minutes and did radio checks and logged everything with hands that had stopped shaking because I had no adrenaline left. At 6:30, I unbolted the door and walked out into pale morning light. The figure was gone from the tunnel entrance. My truck started on the first try. I drove home. The final week. On the 52nd night, I found boot prints in the gravel inside the depot perimeter. They started at the gate and walked to the front door. They were the same prints I'd seen in the tunnel weeks ago. I logged it. Boot prints observed, origin unknown, perimeter compromised. On the 54th night, the radio check at midnight received a voice on channel 6. My voice again. "This is Nathan Webb, November 11th, depot clear." I logged it, switched to channel 9, transmitted code gray, received the tone. At 4 in the morning, I heard my name called from outside the east window. Nathan. Once. I checked the locks, all secure. I continued the inventory count. Nathan. Twice. I circled the increased salt count in red. 162 bags. Nathan. 3 times. I completed an immediate recount. 162 bags. No discrepancies except the ongoing salt increase. On the 56th night, the final night, everything happened at once. At midnight, the figure in the yellow vest stood 15 feet from the front door. I bolted the door and settled in. At 12:45, the perimeter walk reached 30 circuits. I stopped walking and stood still. I counted to 60. Then I walked directly to the front door. It took 9 steps. I was somehow already standing next to it. At 2:38, all lights failed. Main and backup. I retrieved the lantern from the south storage closet. The scratches on the inside of the door were deeper now. Fresh. I could smell something in the closet, copper and stone. At 3 o'clock, I completed the inventory count in silence by lantern light. At 3:45, I stood at the door and looked toward the tunnel entrance for 30 seconds. The figure in the yellow vest stood directly outside the door. The empty hood was 3 feet from my face, separated only by the metal door. I counted to 30. The figure didn't move. At 4 in the morning, I heard my name called 7 times in 90 seconds. At 5 o'clock, during the inventory count, I found a decrease for the first time since the flares. Road salt. Previous count, 162 bags. Current count, 0 bags. All the salt was gone. The shelf was empty. I circled 0 in blue pen. I recounted. 0. The rule said lock the depot from inside with the deadbolt and remain until 6:30. The depot was already locked. I sat at the desk and waited. At 5:53, the knocking stopped. At 6:21, the first daylight touched the east window. At 6:30, I unbolted the door and stepped outside. The figure in the yellow vest was gone. The gravel lot was empty. The tunnel entrance was clear. The morning was cold and bright and perfectly still. I walked to my truck. I drove away. Carver met me at a diner 30 miles down the valley at 8 in the morning. She had an envelope with $6,400 in cash. "You finished," she said. "Clean, no violations." I took the money. My hands were steady. "What happens now?" I asked. "Someone else takes the shift. The rules get updated based on what you logged. The cycle continues." "The salt?" "Something takes it. Something needs it. I don't know what or why. I just know the job exists because that's true. The figure? Still there. Always there. But it's back in the tunnel now. It'll work its way toward the entrance again over the next few months. Whoever takes the shift will deal with it." I drank coffee that tasted like nothing. "Your brother's clear," Carver said. "You did what you needed to do. Go live your life." She left cash for the coffee and walked out. I sat in the booth for another hour, watching trucks pass on the highway. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the rules, about the precise counts, about the 214 steps that sometimes took 15 loops to reach, about the figure in the yellow vest with nothing inside the hood, about the south storage closet and what might be inside it besides a lantern and light sticks. I thought about the next person who would take that shift, someone with their own debt, their own reason to follow rules they don't understand. I still think about it. Every night at 2:10, I look at whatever clock is nearby and imagine someone covering a west window with a black tarp. Counting to 60. Starting over if they hear knocking. Every night at 3:45, I imagine someone standing at a door looking toward a tunnel entrance, counting 30 seconds while something watches back. I followed the rules. I followed them exactly, and I survived. That's supposed to be enough. But 3 weeks ago, I received a package at my apartment. No return address. Inside was a laminated sheet of paper. Rules, a new set, for a different location, a lighthouse on the coast, 12-hour shifts. Strange procedures involving tides and fog and lights that must be checked in a specific sequence. The pay is good. I haven't decided yet. I keep the rules on my kitchen table. I read them sometimes. I count the steps from my front door to my bedroom. 214 if I walk the perimeter of my apartment in the right pattern. I don't know if that means anything, but I count them anyway. Just in case.